Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and really unpack the most important nuggets of knowledge, all to help you become truly well informed. Today, we're embarking on a journey inward. It's a deep dive into something incredibly personal, yet I think universally perplexing. And we're talking about your own mind. Have you ever felt like you're constantly just, reacting, putting out fires, almost like you're a passenger in your own life, maybe gripping the dashboard, yelling at the driver, and then you suddenly realize, wait a minute, I'm the driver. Or maybe your inner world feels less like, well, a well-organized filing system and more like a chaotic jumble, a swirling mass of unfinished thoughts, anxieties, impulses, that stuff that occasionally spills out into your actions in ways you later regret. And you're left thinking, why on earth did I do that?
Oh, absolutely. That sense of being swept along, or, having an internal landscape that resembles maybe a particularly messy toddler's playroom after a sugar rush. That feeling is incredibly common. It's something we all share, really, a common thread in the human experience. And the source material for today's deep dive, this book, Cognizant Life by Andreas Metzen, it really highlights that navigating this ridiculously complex, often bewildering world without a clear map of our own inner terrain, well, that's a universal human challenge. Without that map, we're essentially navigating blind, aren't we? Often driven by these unconscious forces we don't even know are there.
Right. And our mission today is to thoroughly explore chapter 3 of this really insightful book. It's aptly titled Understanding Your Own Mind. We'll unpack why getting to know your inner workings isn't just some, philosophical pursuit, but the absolute foundational step towards living skillfully rather than just reactively. We'll reveal Metzen's framework for how our minds process information, dive into where our buggy code, as he calls it, originates, and most importantly, give you practical, actionable tools to become the mindful programmer of your own experience, really taking the wheel of your inner life instead of just being a puppet of your own unconscious programming. This deep dive promises to deliver more than a few aha moments about how you tick and, crucially, how you can maybe tick a bit better. The core challenge, our unexamined minds. Okay, so let's start at the beginning, the fundamental premise that Metzen lays out in Cognizant Life when he starts exploring the mind. What's the big revelation here? What kicks off this whole journey?
Well, the core insight. And it might sound deceptively simple at first, but it has really profound implications, is this. Life will always throw challenges our way. That's a given, right? Big ones, small persistent ones, those baffling, why is this happening to me specifically right now? Snot-sized ones. But a significant, perhaps even the majority portion of our suffering isn't actually from the external events themselves.
Okay, so it's not the thing that happened.
Exactly. It's not the event itself that necessarily causes the deep pain, but rather our internal reactions to them. As Metzen puts it, it's not just the external storm, it's primarily how we react to the rain, the wind, the lightning. That's what determines our internal experience.
That's a really powerful distinction, isn't it? It shifts the focus away from trying to control everything out there, which, let's face it, is often impossible,
Right.
and towards taking responsibility for our inner world. Can you elaborate a bit on what these internal reactions actually entail? What's going on inside?
Absolutely. The text describes our minds as these magnificent, yet sometimes maddeningly complex pieces of internal machinery. Think of it like a sophisticated, often self-learning internal operating system. And within the system, you've got the whirring gears of thoughts, the constant chatter, the inner monologue. You've got these bubbling cauldrons of emotions, the whole spectrum: joy, grief, anger, peace. Then there are the deeply etched grooves of beliefs, those fundamental assumptions we hold about ourselves, about others, about how the world works. And importantly, these lightning-fast, often unconscious, ingrained patterns are automatic responses to things that happen. These internal forces, often running largely beneath the surface of our awareness, they play a massive, often decisive role in how we perceive, how we interpret, and ultimately, how we respond to life's myriad hurdles. They literally shape our reality from the inside out.
So it's like this internal operating system is constantly running in the background. And if it's got a lot of pre-installed software, maybe outdated stuff, or even, like you said, buggy software, that can really mess with how we process new information.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. Think about this example. Two people face the exact same setback. Let's say a project they poured their heart and soul into gets suddenly canceled. Now, person A, maybe operating with an unexamined mind, might just spiral.
Yeah, I can picture that.
They could perceive it as an unmitigated disaster, a personal failure, maybe even a sign their career is doomed.
Yeah.
They fall into this vortex of stress, self-recrimination, maybe even lashing out. Their internal programming essentially says, failure is catastrophic, avoid at all costs.
Okay. And person B, same event.
Same exact event. Person B, facing the identical cancellation, might feel disappointed, sure. Maybe even a bit frustrated. Those are normal human emotions, completely valid. But because perhaps they have a different internal program running, they might also see it as an opportunity. Maybe an opportunity to learn something valuable from the experience, a chance to regroup and redirect their energy towards something even better. Or maybe just a welcome breather before the next big thing.
Wow. So same external event, but vastly different internal experiences.
And consequently, vastly different outcomes in terms of their well-being, their stress levels, their productivity, their future actions, everything.
That's such a clear illustration. It really highlights how our internal landscape dictates our external experience. So this buggy code, it isn't necessarily something inherently wrong with us, is it? It's more like unhelpful patterns that have just developed over time.
Exactly. That's a crucial point. It illustrates how if our internal operating system is riddled with what medicine metaphorically calls this buggy code, maybe unhelpful beliefs we've never stopped to question, unchecked biases that subtly color our perceptions without us realizing, reactive emotional habits that we just fall into without conscious choice, then even minor bumps in the road can feel monumental. It's like trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of rocks. You can technically do it, but it's going to be so much harder, so much more painful than it needs to be.
Yeah, exhausting.
Completely. But the really good news, the empowering message medicine offers in Cognizant Life, is that you can rewrite some of that buggy code. He's talking about actively debugging and rewriting these internal programs, delving into the cognitive biases, the neural pathways that literally form these unskillful patterns, making them conscious rather than letting them run unseen on autopilot.
Okay, so the core promise then of Cognizant Life and what we're diving into today is that by understanding our inner workings more deeply, by really getting familiar with our own mental operating system, and by actively cultivating more skillful ways of being in the world, we can significantly reduce our own self-inflicted suffering. Is that right?
That's the heart of it. We can learn to navigate external challenges with greater ease, with more wisdom, and definitely more resilience.
And it's important to stress this isn't about suppressing emotions, is it? Or just slapping a fake positive vibes only sticker over genuine pain.
No, not at all. It's not about pretending everything is sunshine and rainbows when you're actually standing in a metaphorical hailstorm. That's just denial. Rather, it's about developing a more conscious, flexible, and resilient relationship with our own minds. It's about learning to recognize when our thoughts are just thoughts, fleeting mental events, not necessarily absolute unshakable truths. And recognizing when our emotions are important signals to pay attention to crucial messengers from our inner world, but not the dictators of our actions. That distinction is key.
Feelings as messengers, not dictators. I like that.
It's about developing the inner tools to move from being, a puppet of our programming, to becoming the mindful programmer of our own experience, finally taking charge of the direction we're headed. 2, the mind's processing system, unpacking the 5 foundations of human experience. So to truly understand our minds, to really start debugging that code, medicine breaks down how we actually process information, moment by moment. He describes it as 5 foundational stages, or layers if you like. It goes from the initial raw input right through to our deeply ingrained patterns. In this framework, it helps us pinpoint exactly where our buggy code can creep in and, more importantly, how we can become those mindful programmers by intervening potentially at each stage.
Okay, like a step-by-step journey the mind takes with every single stimulus, whether it's something outside us or even just a thought inside.
Exactly. Every single experience follows this path, usually incredibly quickly. Foundation 1, sensing, the raw data point.
All right, let's start at the very beginning of this process then. What is the first foundation? Sensing.
Sensing. Foundation 1. This is the absolute first moment. A stimulus, anything from the world around us or even from within us, actually meets your awareness. It comes through any sensory channel. Your eyes registering light and color, your ears picking up sound waves, your skin feeling texture or temperature, your nose detecting a scent, your tongue tasting something. But crucially, medicine also includes what he calls internal mind channels.
Internal mind channels, what does that mean?
It means processing things like a thought that just popped into your head, or a memory that suddenly surfaces, or even a future plan you're contemplating. Those are also stimuli that trigger this process. So sensing is the initial spark, the raw, unprocessed data point that ignites any interaction with reality.
So it's just the pure input then, before any judgment, before any meaning gets assigned, just the raw signal. Precisely. It could be the jarring sound of an urgent phone notification, or the subtle texture of a silk shirt under your fingertips. the scent of fresh rain. Or internally, the sudden arising of an anxious thought about a looming deadline. The key insight Metzen offers here is that even at this stage, our brains are already doing some initial, largely unconscious filtering.
Already at the sensing stage.
Yes, we're constantly bombarded with stimuli, way more than we can consciously process. So our brains prioritize what seems most important for survival or immediate relevance based on our current state and past conditioning. However, he suggests that consciously broadening your sensory reception, intentionally trying to take in more raw data, being more present to the actual sights, sounds, and sensations around you and within you, can give you a fuller, richer, and often more accurate picture of reality right from the start.
So being more present to the raw data reduces the chance of missing important cues later on.
Exactly. You're less likely to miss subtle but potentially important signals if you're truly sensing clearly. B Foundation 2. Initial awareness. The first filter.
Okay, so the raw data is sensed, Foundation 1. What happens next in this rapid-fire processing system?
That brings us to Foundation 2. Initial awareness. Once a stimulus registers through sensing, your mind basically acknowledges its presence. It says, okay, something's here. It's a very basic, often fleeting awareness where you simply notice a sound or a thought, but without deeply analyzing it, categorizing it, or judging it yet.
Like hearing a car horn, you just register the sound.
Exactly. In that split second, you've just registered the sound. It's entered your awareness field. You haven't yet decided if it's annoying, if it means danger, or if it's just background noise you could ignore. It's just recognition without immediate interpretation.
But I imagine even at this very early stage, there must be some kind of subconscious influence, right? On what we even choose to be aware of from that flood of sensation.
You're absolutely right to point that out. Even at this basic level, Metzen highlights a subtle, often subconscious filtering process happening. Our past experiences, our current mindset, our mood, what we happen to be focused on at that moment, all these can subtly shape what we even choose to notice or prioritize out of that constant stream of stimuli.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you're really hungry, you might be much more acutely aware of the smell of food cooking down the street than someone who just ate. If you're feeling stressed or anxious, you might be hyper-aware of potential threats or negative cues in your environment. Our initial filter, this initial awareness, already has these pre-programmed biases baked in. It subtly directs our attention even before we consciously engage with the information. This is really where the mind begins to edit reality, often without our explicit permission.
Wow, okay, so the editing starts really early. See Foundation 3, cognitive elaboration, analysis, perception, and emotional response. This next stage, cognitive elaboration, sounds like where the real heavy lifting happens, where the meaning-making begins.
It absolutely is. This is Foundation 3, and it's where your mind truly dives deeper and gets really busy. Here, your mind starts actively analyzing the stimulus. It pulls information from your vast memory banks, compares the current input to past experiences, and activates learned associations. This is the analysis phase. Your brain's prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and executive function, tries to label, categorize, and understand the situation logically. And simultaneously, your mind is doing two crucial things: perceiving and assigning an emotional response.
Okay, break this down. Perceiving.
Perceiving means identifying patterns, trying to make sense of the input. So, back to the car horn example. Perception might be, that specific pattern of honking probably means traffic is jammed up ahead. You're interpreting the raw sound based on past experience.
And the emotional response.
That's where your limbic system, your emotional centers, rapidly adds that affective color to the experience. Is this stimulus pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? So the perception, traffic is jammed, might immediately trigger an emotional response like, this feels frustrating because I'm going to be late.
Okay, so analysis, perception, and emotion all happening together in this stage.
Pretty much simultaneously, yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting, and frankly, where the potential for self-inflicted suffering often originates. This stage, cognitive elaboration, is the primary crucible where our biases, our deeply ingrained assumptions, and our fundamental beliefs can powerfully distort our interpretation. They color the very reality we construct in our minds.
So this is where the buggy code can really come into play and actively distort our reality.
Exactly. The source material emphasizes that our inherent subjectivity shapes everything from how we interpret a casual comment from a partner to how we approach a major life decision. We often genuinely believe we're seeing objective reality, when in fact we're seeing a highly filtered, personally interpreted version of it. Our mind constructs our world.
Can you give another example of how this perception shapes our experience so differently?
Sure, think about a challenge at work. Maybe a new, complex task lands on your desk. How you perceive that task, whether you see it as an insurmountable threat, a sign you're not capable, or as a valuable opportunity for growth. That perception directly determines your emotional response, dread versus excitement, and your behavioral response, procrastination versus engagement. If you perceive it as an overwhelming burden, you'll likely feel dread, maybe procrastinate, and ultimately probably deliver a mediocre result because you're operating from fear.
Right.
But if you perceive the exact same task as an exciting growth opportunity, a chance to learn new skills and prove yourself, you'll likely approach it with enthusiasm, creativity, and focus. And the outcome, probably much better. Same task, totally different perception, profoundly different outcome. Or think about receiving constructive criticism. Do you instantly perceive it as a personal attack because of past hurts leading to defensiveness?
Yeah, that happens.
Or can you pause, recognize it as potentially useful feedback, and perceive it as an opportunity for improvement? The power to consciously shift your perception in the stage is immense.
Now, the book makes a really crucial point about emotions in this stage. It says they are vital signals, crucial messengers from our inner world, but crucially, they are not the dictators of our actions. That feels like a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely is. This is perhaps one of Menson's most profound and practical insights. Emotions are vital data. That sudden rush of anxiety before a presentation, for example. It isn't necessarily a signal to flee the room screaming or call in sick. It could simply be a messenger saying, hey, pay attention. This matters to you. Be prepared. Maybe channel this energy into focus.
Okay.
Or the feeling of anger after being cut off in traffic. It's not an order from your brain to engage in road rage. It's a signal. Maybe a signal about perceived injustice or a feeling of being disrespected. The challenge and the path to skillful living that Metzen outlines lies in learning to listen to these messengers without letting them seize control of the steering wheel.
So it's not about ignoring feelings or suppressing them, which I think is often our default reaction, right? Just push it down.
Exactly. And we know that doesn't work. Suppressed emotions often fester and tend to erupt later, often in unskillful ways. Anger turns into resentment, fear into chronic anxiety, and the opposite mistake is just as common, letting emotions completely hijack your actions without any reflection, just acting straight out of the feeling.
Like the road rage example.
Precisely. Feeling frustrated during a project delay isn't necessarily a cue to lash out at a team member or just give up. That's letting the messenger, frustration, become the dictator. Instead, Metzen suggests it's a signal to pause. Observe that frustration without judgment, just noticing, frustration is here, and then reflect. What is this frustration really telling me? Is it about unmet expectations, a need for control that's being thwarted, something else entirely? And based on that reflection, ask, what's the wise, skillful response here? One that aligns with my values and goals rather than just my immediate impulse.
That ability to reflect instead of just reacting seems absolutely foundational.
It is. It's foundational to emotional intelligence and ultimately to true self-mastery. It's moving from reaction to response. D Foundation 4. Mental formations, ingrained patterns and beliefs.
Okay, so we've had sensing, initial awareness, cognitive elaboration. Now we arrive at Foundation 4, mental formations. This sounds like where the buggy code gets, I don't know, permanently installed, or at least deeply embedded.
That's a good way to think about it, precisely. This in-depth processing we just talked about in stage 3, especially when it happens repeatedly over time, leads to our interpretations becoming deeply ingrained. They solidify. They shape our fundamental beliefs about life, our habitual attitudes towards certain situations or people, and our automatic behavioral inclinations. These mental formations are the deeply etched grooves in our minds, the ingrained patterns that largely dictate our responses to recurring situations. Think of them like habits of thought, feeling, and action.
And how are they formed? Just through repetition?
Largely through repetition, yes. And through our experiences, our conditioning often starting from a very young age, influenced by family, culture, significant life events. And crucially, they tend to operate on autopilot, often entirely outside our conscious control.
Like software programs running in the background.
Exactly like that. Deeply embedded software programs constantly running, influencing your perception and reaction without you even noticing most of Hamish time. Recognizing these mental formations, bringing them into the light of awareness, is a significant step towards self-mastery. Because only when you make these unconscious programs conscious can you begin to consciously challenge them, modify them, and ultimately maybe rewrite them. You can turn those unhelpful automatic patterns into more skillful, conscious choices. E Foundation 5. Continuous awareness, the connecting thread.
This paints a picture of a very complex internal system, doesn't it? Often running on old, unexamined programming. So how do we actually move from being, as you said, a puppet of this programming to becoming the mindful programmer? What's the overarching skill that connects all these foundations?
That's the perfect question, and it leads us to Foundation 5, continuous awareness. Now, Metzen presents this not as just another step in the sequence, but as the constant, consistent thread that connects all the other stages. It's the underlying faculty.
So it's not linear, it's pervasive.
Exactly. It's the faculty within us that observes, notices, and maintains presence through sensing, through initial awareness, through cognitive elaboration. And even as those mental formations arise and try to take over, this ongoing continuous awareness is what allows you to connect the dots in your experiences. It enables you to truly understand situations as they unfold in real time, rather than just reacting blindly to isolated snapshots or being swept away by immediate impulses or old habits.
So it's like having an internal debugger running constantly, monitoring the system.
That's a fantastic analogy, yes. It monitors your system, allowing you to see how your perceptions are being formed, how your emotions are arising, how your ingrained patterns are influencing your choices in this very moment.
So it boils down to being consistently present and attentive to your inner world.
Exactly. Continuous awareness allows you to make more intentional, data-driven choices. Choices based on observing what's actually happening inside you and around you, rather than purely reactive ones based on fleeting feelings or those deeply ingrained old habits. For example, instead of immediately judging a new person you meet based on some subtle trigger or past association, mental formation, continuous awareness might allow you to. 1. Observe your initial reaction. I notice a feeling of mistrust arising. 2. Recognize any potential biases. Is this based on this person or something from my past? And 3. Consciously choose to engage with an open mind, gathering more actual data before forming a conclusion.
Okay.
It's the consistent moment-to-moment presence that allows genuine transformation to take root and flourish. Without it, our experiences just remain fragmented, our patterns stay unexamined, and true self-mastery remains elusive. It's really the key that unlocks the door to debugging your mind and becoming truly cognizant, truly aware of your life as it happens. 3. The mind as a garden. A powerful metaphor for cultivation.
Okay, those 5 foundations give us a great framework for understanding the process. But to make these abstract concepts more tangible, more actionable day to day, Metzen offers a really powerful and accessible metaphor. He suggests thinking of your mind as a garden. I find this incredibly helpful. It just makes the idea of self-cultivation feel so intuitive.
It's an excellent metaphor, isn't it? Because it beautifully encapsulates both the effort involved and the immense potential we all have. So imagine your mind as this plot of fertile land. And within this land, there are countless seeds. These seeds represent all the various mental and emotional states and potentials that exist within you. All these possibilities, kindness, anger, patience, fear, clarity, confusion, they lie dormant, just waiting for the right conditions, waiting for cultivation. They're not inherently good or bad in seed form, they just are. Potential waiting.
And within this garden, like any garden, we have both the seeds for things we want to grow and seeds for things we'd rather not have taking over, right? The flowers and the weeds.
Yeah.
Precisely. On one hand, Metzen says, there are seeds of incredibly positive, skillful qualities. These are the flowers and the fruit-bearing trees of your mind garden. Qualities like mindfulness itself, compassion, patience, joy, resilience, clarity, generosity, wisdom, inner peace. All those qualities we inherently wish to embody and express. The ones that lead to a richer, more meaningful life for ourselves and usually for those around us too.
The desirable crops, so to speak, and then on the other side.
Simultaneously, your garden also contains seeds of less helpful, often unskillful states. These are the weeds. States like anger, fear, jealousy, self-doubt, impatience, confusion, resentment, a tendency towards blame or playing the victim, you know the ones. All those states that tend to cause suffering for ourselves and often spill over and cause suffering for others. Anger, for instance, if it's unchecked, destructive anger, it can definitely be a weed that chokes out everything beautiful around it. Fear, if it's left unexamined and allowed to run rampant, can completely prevent growth and keep us stuck.
Okay. And here's the crucial part, isn't it? The empowering point. What I see is the real aha moment of this whole metaphor. It's that you, the gardener, get to determine which of these seeds, the flowers or the weeds, actually sprout and flourish.
Exactly.
It depends entirely on the attention, the nourishment, the cultivation they receive from you through your daily choices, through where you place your internal focus.
That's the core message. It's the ultimate expression of personal agency over our inner landscape. water grows. The simple truth, when you really grasp it, hold immense transformative power.
It puts the responsibility, but also the power right back in our hands.
Absolutely. And it's not about trying to eradicate the weed seeds entirely. That's often futile and exhausting.
Yeah.
Because they are an inherent part of the human condition, right? They'll always be present to some extent. We all experience anger, fear, self-doubt sometimes. The goal isn't some sterile, perfectly weed-free garden that's an unrealistic and frankly stressful pursuit. Instead, it's about intentionally cultivating the good stuff, the flowers and fruit, so robustly, so consistently, that they naturally overshadow and diminish the space and the nourishment available for the weeds.
So the flowers crowd out the weeds, essentially.
That's the idea. It's an active process. It requires first identifying the seeds through self-awareness, knowing what flowers you genuinely want to see more of in your life, and what weeds tend to pop up frequently for you. And then, consciously choosing where to direct your energy, your attention, your water. A, nurturing the flowers. Intentional cultivation.
Okay, so if we want a garden that's filled with vibrant, healthy flowers, those positive mental states, how do we actively nurture them? It sounds like it requires real, active, consistent effort, not just, wishing for more patience or compassion.
It absolutely does. It requires an intentional, consistent approach. This isn't past gardening where you just throw some seeds down and hope for the best. And cognizant life highlight that nurturing these positive mental states isn't about maintaining some kind of superficial, positive vibes-only facade. That could be really dismissive of genuine pain or struggle, both in ourselves and others.
Right. Toxic positive.
Exactly. Instead, it means consciously choosing which seeds to water through consistent practices. Things you actively do. For instance, practicing gratitude. Maybe by taking just a minute each day to reflect on 1 to 3 specific things you're genuinely grateful for, even small ones. A good cup of coffee, a supportive friend, a moment of quiet. Or intentionally focusing on your strengths rather than constantly dwelling on perceived weaknesses. Where is your energy going? Or actively cultivating empathy by really trying to listen deeply to others, trying to understand their perspective even if you don't agree with it. Or maybe engaging in positive affirmations, not as wishful thinking, but as a way to gently challenge negative self-talk and reshape your internal dialogue over time.
So it's about these specific actions, but also about creating the right overall environment for growth, right? Not just watering individual seeds, but tending the soil itself.
Precisely. That's a crucial part of it. It involves creating a supportive environment for your whole garden through practices like golf, mindfulness meditation, which strengthens that core muscle of awareness, the gardener's ability to see clearly. Regular self-reflection, maybe journaling or just quiet contemplation, which helps you understand your patterns, see which weeds are growing, which flowers need attention. Practicing self-compassion, learning to treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a good friend when you inevitably stumble or struggle. Being a kind gardener to yourself, and, very importantly, taking holistic care of your physical well-being. As Metzen emphasizes, mind and body are deeply interconnected. When you consistently feed your body nutritious food, get enough restorative sleep, and move your body regularly, you create more fertile soil for your mental flowers to thrive.
It all works together.
It really does. This holistic approach ensures the soil for your flowers is rich and fertile, making it easier for them to flourish and, naturally, harder for those weeds to take over and dominate the landscape. B. Weeding the garden. Skillfully diminishing unhelpful patterns.
Okay, so we're actively growing the good stuff, nurturing the flowers. But effectively managing the weeds, those unhelpful patterns, those difficult emotions, is equally crucial for a truly flourishing inner garden, isn't it? You can plant all the beautiful flowers you want, but if the weeds choke them out, the garden just won't thrive. Now, the source advises against violently ripping them out, which I guess implies fighting with them or trying to force them away, which often just seems to make them stronger or maybe spread their seeds even more.
That's a very common experience, isn't it? Trying to suppress anger often just makes it build up. Trying to fight anxiety can often make it worse.
Definitely. So how do we skillfully diminish their ability to dominate the garden without getting into that counterproductive battle?
That's the critical question.
Yeah.
And the key, according to Metzen, is understanding their nature and skillfully diminishing their ability to take root and dominate, rather than engaging in that futile, energy-draining war against them. He outlines a multi-pronged approach for this kind of skillful weeding. First, and perhaps most fundamental, is acknowledging and observing. This means simply noticing and mentally naming the unhelpful emotion or pattern to yourself, ideally without judgment. For example, just internally noting, impatience is here, or, okay, I notice a wave of self-doubt washing over me, or feeling defensive right now. This simple act of acknowledging creates a crucial bit of space around the emotion or thought. It prevents it from immediately and automatically hijacking your actions.
Just naming it creates space.
It does. It's like acknowledging a visitor at your door. Just seeing who it is and giving it a name makes it less intimidating and less likely to just barge right in and take over the house. The moment you name it, fear, you create a tiny bit of distance, a crack through which your awareness, your observing self can enter. You're not being the anger, you're observing the anger. Second, there's cognitive restructuring. This is where we gently but firmly learn to question and reframe the unhelpful beliefs or thoughts that might be fueling those weeds. So instead of automatically accepting a self-defeating thought like, I'm a complete failure because this project didn't work out, you pause. You investigate. You ask yourself, is that thought 100% true? Absolutely. What's the objective evidence against it? Are there other ways to see this? Is there a more balanced, helpful way to view this situation?
Like, maybe it's not a total failure, but a valuable learning opportunity.
Exactly. Or maybe my part went okay, but other factors were involved. This active questioning and reframing changes the mental formation itself. It weakens the unhelpful belief by starving it of the energy and the unchallenged acceptance it needs to thrive. You're actively changing the code, shifting from automatic negative self-talk to a more inquisitive, constructive inner dialogue. And third, there's emotional intelligence development. This goes beyond just recognizing your emotions, which is the acknowledging part. It's about understanding them more deeply, learning how they feel in your body. Where does anxiety live for you? A tight chest, a knot in the stomach, a racing mind, understanding what typically triggers them, what messages they might actually be carrying beneath the surface noise. And then learning how to skillfully manage them constructively so you're not constantly controlled by them. And, just as importantly, this inner understanding naturally extends outwards. It helps you develop the ability to recognize and respond more effectively, more compassionately to the emotions of others. This fosters much stronger connections.
So the more attuned you are to your own emotional landscape,
The better you become at navigating challenging states within yourself, preventing them from completely overwhelming you or dictating your actions in ways you later regret. And the better you become at relating to others' emotional states too.
So the goal isn't a perfect, sterile, weed-free garden then. It's more like a robust, resilient, well-managed one.
Precisely. The state of your mind garden directly impacts your experience of life and your interactions with everyone around you. It's an ongoing process, not a destination you arrive at. It requires patience, diligence, consistency, and perhaps most importantly, a good dose of self-compassion. Because sometimes the weeds will grow strong and sometimes you'll forget to water the flowers. That's okay. You just notice and gently return to the practice. The aim isn't sterile perfection, but a vibrant, resilient, and predominantly positive inner ecosystem where skillful qualities are strong and readily accessible, and the unskillful ones are acknowledged, understood, and skillfully managed rather than being allowed to run wild and choke out the good stuff. 4. Why this matters, the profound benefits of understanding your mind. Okay, so after exploring the mechanics, those 5 foundations, and the powerful garden metaphor, the natural question arises, doesn't it? Why bother? Why dedicate this precious energy to understanding our own minds? It sounds like work.
Yeah, what's the payoff?
Well, the benefits, as medicine meticulously details in Cognizant Life, are not merely theoretical or philosophical. They are deeply practical and transformative. They impact pretty much every facet of skillful living, from how we make simple daily decisions, to how we relate to our loved ones, to how we recover from major setbacks. A. Clarity and perception.
We talked quite a bit about how our minds act as filters, often distorting reality without us even knowing it. So how does understanding those mental filters lead directly to greater clarity and perception, seeing things more as they are?
Well, understanding our mental filters is really the essential first step if we want to consciously interact more openly and fairly with the world and with other people. If you accept the premise that our reality is largely constructed, moment by moment, by our mind's interpretations, not just by objective facts coming in, then understanding that process becomes absolutely vital. It allows you to pause, to consciously question your initial take on situations, to step back for a second and ask, okay, wait, is there another way to see this situation? What specific facts am I focusing on here, and what might I be overlooking or ignoring because of my mood or my history? What unconscious assumptions or biases might I be bringing to this interaction?
So it prompts that moment of questioning before reacting.
Exactly. This pause helps you approach situations much more objectively before you just react or jump to conclusions based on that first, often biased interpretation. And this prevents so many common misinterpretations that lead to conflict, misunderstandings, and unnecessary stress. Think about getting a curt email from a colleague. An unexamined mind might instantly perceive it as hostility or disrespect. Wow, what's their problem?
Yeah, easy to do.
Very easy. But a mind practiced in awareness, understanding its own filters, would pause. It would consider other possibilities. Okay, maybe they're just really busy right now. Maybe they're stressed about something else entirely. Maybe they're just concise by nature. And then choose a more measured response, maybe asking for clarification, instead of reacting defensively. That simple shift, born from clearer perception, can prevent a whole cascade of misunderstandings and negative feelings. B, improved personal decision-making.
Okay, that makes sense for perception. Now, our minds are constantly evaluating and making decisions too, right? From tiny daily choices, what to eat, what to wear, to huge life paths, careers, relationships. How does understanding these complex internal processes help us move from that knee-jerk reactivity to being more resourceful? How does it lead to genuinely better outcomes and maybe prevent some of those "if only I'd known" moments?
It absolutely helps prevent those moments of regret by fundamentally improving the quality of our personal decision-making. How? By understanding how our perception is actively constructed, as we just discussed, how deeply our emotional states can influence our reasoning, often hijacking it, and how common mental shortcuts or cognitive biases can lead us completely astray. Understanding all that allows us to interrupt those automatic, often flawed patterns.
So awareness breaks the chain reaction.
It gives you a chance to break it. Think about facing a sudden, unexpected personal challenge, maybe a job loss, a relationship crisis, a health scare. An unexamined mind, caught in the grip of intense fear, anxiety, or maybe anger, might react impulsively, making rash decisions that actually exacerbate the problem in the long run.
Yeah, acting out of panic rarely works well.
Rarely. But a person who understands their mind, who practices the principles in cognizant life, has other options. They can acknowledge the arising fear or panic. Okay, fear's really strong right now. They can pause, maybe use the PREP technique we'll discuss. They can allow that initial emotional wave to crest and pass without being swept away by it. And then once the emotional storm has calmed a bit, they could access clearer, more objective thinking. They can formulate resourceful and effective responses that align with their long-term goals and values, not just with the immediate urge to escape the discomfort.
So it's about choosing a wise response over an impulsive reaction.
Exactly. Leading to fewer "if only I'd known" or "why did I do that?" moments, because you're making choices from a place of greater insight and awareness, not just from unchecked impulse or overwhelming emotion. C, greater emotional intelligence.
We've touched on emotions quite a bit as messengers, as potential hijackers. They're clearly a powerful and unavoidable force in our lives. How does this deep understanding of our own mind contribute to developing a more profound and, importantly, actionable emotional intelligence, both for ourselves and in relating to others?
Well, understanding how your own emotions arise, what messages they might be carrying, how they physically feel in your body, and crucially, how to manage them constructively without being totally controlled by them. That is the very essence of emotional intelligence, isn't it? The inner dimension of it. And this inner understanding, this self-awareness and self-management, naturally extends outwards. It builds a greater capacity to recognize, understand, and empathize with the emotions of others. This fosters much stronger connections and more supportive, harmonious relationships.
Can you give an example of how that plays out?
Sure. Imagine a friend comes to you, clearly upset and expressing intense frustration about something at work. Someone with lower emotional insight might feel uncomfortable, maybe dismiss their reaction with a quick platitude like, "oh, don't worry about it," or "it'll be fine," or even start offering unsolicited advice immediately.
Yeah, trying to fix it or make the feeling go away.
Right. But an individual practicing these cognizant life principles, someone who understands the power and validity of emotions as messengers in themselves and others, would likely approach it differently. They'd approach with empathy. They'd seek to understand their friend's experience without judgment. They might validate the feelings first. "Wow, I hear how incredibly frustrating this is for you. Tell me more." They offer genuine presence and support, rather than trying to immediately fix or dismiss the emotion.
Which probably makes the friend feel heard and understood.
Exactly. And that builds trust, deepens the connection, and ultimately makes you a more effective and compassionate friend, partner, colleague, parent, you name it. Better relationships are a huge benefit. D, increased personal resilience and adaptability.
Okay, another big one. Life is inherently filled with challenges, uncertainty, setbacks. It's just part of the deal. How does understanding our minds help us not just bounce back stronger from adversity, but maybe even bounce forward, as the source implies, using those setbacks as actual fuel for growth?
This is perhaps one of the most vital benefits, especially in our unpredictable modern world. Understanding your mind helps you recognize and then actively disarm those unhelpful mental patterns that tend to kick in during difficult times. Patterns like catastrophizing, where your mind instantly jumps to the absolute worst-case scenario, making every problem seem like an insurmountable disaster.
Oh, yeah, it's the end of the world thinking.
Exactly. Or excessive self-criticism, where you just beat yourself up mercilessly after any perceived failure, completely eroding your confidence. These patterns amplify stress enormously and prevent you from seeing alternative solutions or resources you might actually have. So understanding your mind equips you with the inner tools to cultivate genuine resilience. And this means you bounce back from adversity, not just by, toughing it out, through sheer willpower, which often leads to burnout and exhaustion eventually.
Right, gritting your teeth only gets you so far. Precisely. Instead, you learn to bounce back by actively learning, adapting, and growing stronger and wiser from the experience itself. It transforms setbacks, even really painful ones, into genuine opportunities for insight and development. So instead of allowing a difficult situation to make you bitter, withdrawn, or fearful, you learn from it. You integrate the lessons, and you emerge more flexible, more adaptable, and more robust for whatever future challenges come your way. It fundamentally shifts your internal relationship with difficulty. It helps turn that harsh internal critic into a more constructive coach, allowing you to navigate change and uncertainty with much greater agility and grace. V. Putting it into practice. Everyday tools for the mind gardener.
Okay, this all sounds fantastic in theory. The benefits are really clear. More clarity, better decisions, stronger relationships, resilience. Who wouldn't want that? But how do we actually do this? How do we become these mindful programmers, these skilled gardeners of our minds in the middle of our busy, messy, everyday lives? What are the actionable tools we can start using today without needing to, go off to a silent retreat for a month?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And cognizant life is deeply practical in this regard. Medicine offers incredibly simple yet surprisingly powerful daily practices that you can weave into the fabric of your existing life. They don't require grand gestures or huge chunks of time carved out for silent meditation, although formal practice is helpful too. It's more about consistent, small, intentional efforts. Think of them as micro practices that build momentum over time. A, the what am I feeling really? Check in.
Let's start with this one, the what am I feeling really?
Yeah.
Check in. This sounds like a really foundational practice for boosting that core self-awareness, that crucial first step to understanding our inner world. How does it work?
It's all about building emotional literacy, getting clearer on your internal weather patterns. A few times throughout your day, maybe set a quiet reminder, or just do it when you naturally notice a shift in your mood or energy. Perhaps you feel a sudden surge of frustration or a vague sense of unease settling in, or even an unexpected wave of joy. Whatever it is, just pause. Take one conscious breath. Then internally ask yourself, what emotion am I actually feeling right now? And try to name it specifically. Go beyond just good or bad or stressed. Is it irritated, anxious, a bit flat, disappointed, maybe curiously excited, or content? The more precise you can be, the more insight you gain.
So naming it is key.
Naming it is key. And then a crucial follow-up question. Where do I feel this in my body? Just notice the physical sensations associated with that emotion. Do it with curiosity, without judgment. Is there a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a buzzing in your head, warmth in your face, a heaviness in your limbs? There's no need to change the feeling or analyze why it's there in this moment. Just observe it, name it, and locate it physically.
Just notice.
Just notice. This simple, consistent practice builds profound emotional literacy over time. The more you practice, the better you get at recognizing these inner signals before they escalate into a full-blown emotional takeover. This gives you that precious space to respond skillfully rather than just react automatically. B, the 1-minute awareness check-in.
Okay, next tool, the 1-minute awareness check-in. I can imagine that just committing to 1 minute feels much more achievable for anyone, even in the busiest day, compared to, say, 20 minutes of meditation. How does this consistent mini practice build our mindful muscle?
It's highly effective, precisely because it's so accessible and repeatable. The consistency is key. Set a subtle reminder on your phone or computer, maybe an alarm that just says breathe or check in, or even just a gentle chime, something that won't startle you. When it goes off, no matter what you're doing, unless you're driving or operating heavy machinery, obviously, just stop for 1 minute, just 60 seconds, and gently guide your attention through these 4 points. 1, breath. Simply notice its natural rhythm. Don't try to change it or control it. Just feel the physical sensations of breathing in and breathing out. 2, body. Do a quick, gentle scan for any obvious areas of tension. Common spots are shoulders, jaw, forehead, hands, and just gently invite them to soften. Release any unnecessary gripping or holding. 3. Emotional state. Gently name the primary emotion present right now, again, without judgment. Could be simple, like, okay, notice a feeling of calmness here, or, there's a feeling of slight anxiety, or feeling a bit restless, or content. Just label it gently. 4. Thoughts. Briefly observe the mental activity. What kind of thoughts are passing through your mind right now? Are they planning thoughts, worrying thoughts, memories? Just watch them float by like clouds in the sky without getting caught up in their stories or analyzing them.
Just noticing the flow.
Just noticing the flow. This simple, consistent practice, done maybe 3 or 4 times throughout your day, builds profound self-awareness. It strengthens your capacity for presence and sustained attention. It really is like doing small, frequent reps at the gym for your mindful muscle. It makes a difference. C, the PREP practice. Pause, reflect, engage, proceed.
All right, the next one sounds really practical. The PREP practice. Pause, reflect, engage, proceed. This sounds like a versatile 4-step framework you could use for almost any situation, maybe from handling a triggering text message to making a major personal decision. Can you walk us through it?
Absolutely. The PREP practice is a powerful tool for consciously interrupting those ingrained reactive patterns and choosing a more intentional, skillful response instead. Here's how it breaks down. 1. Pause. This is your critical first step. It means consciously creating a momentary space, even just a second or two, between a stimulus, an event, a thought, an emotion, something someone says, and your typical automatic response.
How do you create that space?
The simplest way is to take 1, 2, or maybe 3 deep conscious breaths. Feel the air coming in and going out. This simple physiological act interrupts the neurological reactive cycle. It allows you to bring present moment awareness into the situation. It's like hitting the emergency brake on that runaway train of reactivity. Without the pause, you're just on autopilot, running the old program. 2. Reflect. In that clarifying space you've just created with the pause, engage in brief, focused reflection. Ask yourself some quick questions. Okay, what's really going on here, both externally and internally? What am I feeling right now and maybe why? What thoughts are running through my mind? Are they helpful? Are they true? What are the objective facts here versus my interpretations or assumptions? And importantly, what is my core intention here? What value do I want to guide my response? Do I want to be kind, clear, firm, understanding?
So you're checking in with your inner compass.
Exactly. You're consulting your inner wisdom, your insight, your integrity before you act. You're consciously accessing clarity. 3. Engage. Once you've paused and reflected, even briefly, you consciously choose your response. This could be the words you use, the tone of voice you adopt, the specific actions you take, or maybe even consciously choosing not to act or respond right away. The point is, you are no longer being dragged along by impulses or old programming. You are making a deliberate, informed choice about how to proceed. You're engaging with awareness. 4. Proceed. Finally, put your chosen response into action. But, and this is important, do so with continued awareness. Observe the impact of your actions both on yourself and on the situation or other people involved, and remain open to learning and adapting. If the outcome isn't quite what you intended, or if the situation changes, the PREP cycle can begin anew. You can pause again, reflect again, and adjust your engagement.
So it's dynamic, not just a one-shot deal.
Exactly. This makes PREP a dynamic, iterative process for navigating life skillfully and consciously, moment by moment. D. Mindful transitions, and check out Lion Zen.
Okay, I love this next idea. Many of us feel like we're always rushing from one thing to the next, right? Or we feel like we're wasting time when we're just stuck waiting around, like in line at the grocery store, or waiting for a meeting to start. My default mode in those moments usually succumbs to impatience, or, let's be honest, mindless phone scrolling. How can these often lost moments become opportunities for practice?
Those are perfect, often completely wasted opportunities for cultivating awareness. Medicine encourages us to use mindful transitions throughout our day. Think about all the moments between activities, finishing one email and immediately lunging into the next, walking from your car into the office building, ending a phone call and instantly checking notifications, getting up from your desk to get water. These transitions are typically lost, aren't they? Lost to rushing, mindless phone checking, or just mental clutter about what's coming next.
Totally. Just dead time or rush time.
Right. So instead, consciously transform these transitions into opportunities for a brief mental reset, a mini pause. Even taking just 3 slow, conscious breaths as you move from one task to another, or as you walk through a doorway feeling your feet on the ground, can make a significant difference. You're reclaiming the gaps in your day, stitching them together with little moments of presence. And then there's the classic, the infamous checkout line Zen. We all get stuck in queues, waiting rooms, traffic. Instead of automatically succumbing to impatience, which is so easy to do, feels almost natural, but just increases your internal stress and achieves nothing. Use this dead time for what Metzen playfully calls a stealth meditation.
Stealth meditation, I like it. What does that involve?
Nobody else needs to know you're doing it. Just bring your awareness gently to your breath. Feel the rise and fall of your chest or abdomen. Feel the solidness of your feet on the floor, grounding you. Observe the people around you, maybe by the gentle, open curiosity, without judgment or making up stories about them. Scan your own body for tension. Are your shoulders creeping up towards your ears? Is your jaw clenched? Are you impatiently tapping your foot? And consciously try to soften those areas. Breathe into them. You absolutely cannot control the speed of the line or the traffic jam, but you absolutely can choose how you experience your time waiting in it.
That's powerful, turning frustration into practice.
It's a powerful everyday exercise in equanimity. It reminds you that any moment, even a seemingly annoying or boring one, can be a mindful one. It transforms wasted time into a moment of intentional practice for your mind garden. E. Reframing failure as feedback or first attempt in learning. FAIL.
Okay, this next one feels really important for resilience and growth. Reframing failure as feedback, or even using the acronym FAIL as first attempt in learning. When things inevitably don't go as planned, as they often do in life, how does this kind of wisdom help us navigate those setbacks more effectively than just getting discouraged or beating ourselves up?
This is such a critical insight for anyone who wants to learn, grow, or achieve anything meaningful, because setbacks are guaranteed. Wisdom, as presented in Cognizant Life, offers a profound way to reframe what we typically label as failure. Instead of automatically slapping that harsh failure label on the outcome and then spiraling into self-judgment or blame, which is so easy to do and highly detrimental to motivation and well-being, wisdom encourages you to pause. And to see the outcome, even if it's deeply disappointing, is valuable feedback. Pure data. Then you ask different questions, not why am I such a failure, but okay, what specific lessons can I extract from this experience for next time? What did I learn about the process, about myself, about this particular situation? What worked, even partially? What didn't work, and why?
So it shifts the focus immediately to learning.
Immediately. Metzen even suggests playfully thinking of it as a first attempt in learning, FAIL. That acronym instantly changes the energy, doesn't it? It moves the focus from harsh judgment and regret to curiosity, objective analysis, learning, and continuous improvement. It transforms what felt like a dead end into a signpost pointing towards the next step, armed with new information.
So it's really about shifting from being solely focused on the outcome to appreciating the process and the learning.
Exactly. Closely related to this, wisdom guides you to focus more on the process, not just fixating on the outcome. While setting goals and aiming for specific results are important, of course, true growth, genuine satisfaction, and sustained motivation often thrive when you learn to appreciate the effort involved, the strategies you employ, the challenges you navigated, and the learning process itself, regardless of the immediate result. When you can derive value from the journey, even when the destination isn't exactly what you expected or hoped for, you build incredible resilience and adaptability. It allows you to cultivate the mental flexibility to adapt, adjust your approach, and continue moving forward without being completely derailed by every misstep or unexpected detour. F. Real-world example, David's product recall situation.
These tools sound great individually. Can you give us a real-world example of how these principles might come together in practice? The book talks about a director named David facing a really tough product recall situation. It sounds like a high-stakes, high-stress scenario where skillful living, applying these ideas, could really make a significant, tangible difference.
Yes, that's an excellent illustration from the book, showing how these principles aren't just for quiet personal introspection, but can be applied effectively in high-pressure, complex, collective challenges, like in a business crisis. Consider the case of David, a director at a manufacturing company. He suddenly faced a major crisis. A key product line was found to be defective and needed a massive recall. This had the potential to cost the company millions, severely damage its hard-won reputation, and obviously cause immense internal stress and turmoil for everyone involved.
Yeah, a nightmare scenario for a leader.
Absolutely. Now, a less skillful, more reactive approach might have been immediate panic, maybe assigning blame quickly to find a scapegoat and deflect pressure, or just issuing a top-down command and control mandate for damage control without much input, driven purely by fear and protecting the bottom line. Instead, David, operating from a cognizant life perspective, consciously chose a mindful, more skillful approach. He applied several of the tools and principles we've just discussed.
Okay, so what was his first step applying these tools in that crisis? Did he start with honesty and transparency?
Precisely. His initial step was essentially to pause, resisting the urge to react immediately with panic or blame, and then to acknowledge the problem's severity openly and transparently with his team. He didn't try to minimize it or hide the potential consequences. This immediately created psychological safety and opened the door for transparent discussion. Then, crucially, he actively practiced empathy. He listened deeply to his team's concerns, acknowledging their stress, their fears about the company's future or their jobs, the extra workload they were suddenly facing. He didn't just focus on the operational fix, he acknowledged the human element of the crisis.
So he was watering the seeds of connection and trust.
Exactly. By validating their feelings rather than dismissing them, I understand this is stressful and demanding, he was consciously watering the seeds of connection and psychological safety, both in his own mind garden and in the collective mind garden of his team.
Okay, so transparency and empathy first, and then did he shift from blaming to learning, applying that failure as feedback concept we just talked about?
Exactly right. He then led a reflective session applying the reflect part of the PREP framework collectively. The focus was squarely on understanding the root causes of the product defect systemically. Why did our processes allow this to happen? Not whose fault was this?
Right.
Huge difference. He actively cultivated seeds of curiosity. How did this happen? What can we learn? And collective responsibility. How do we fix this and prevent it from happening again? Explicitly reframing the failure of the recall into invaluable feedback for improving their systems. He encouraged the team to ask, what specific lessons can we extract from this experience to make us stronger? And the outcome, according to the source, was truly transformative. The team, feeling supported and understood rather than blamed or judged, was able to engage their best creative thinking. They felt safe to speak up. They collectively identified genuinely innovative solutions, not just to fix the immediate product problem, but also to implement lasting systemic changes to quality control and communication processes. And they implemented these changes more effectively and collaboratively than anyone might have expected under such pressure.
Wow.
So the crisis, which could have been absolutely devastating for the company and the team's morale, actually became a powerful learning opportunity. It significantly strengthened the team's problem-solving skills, built their collective resilience for handling future challenges, and even improved their internal relationships and trust.
That's a fantastic example. It really shows how nurturing those positive mental formations like trust, curiosity, collaboration, and skillfully managing the negative ones like fear, blame, panic in a complex real-world scenario leads to a flourishing mind garden, not just for an individual, but potentially for a whole team or organization.
It demonstrates the practical power of these principles beautifully. Outro.
Well, this deep dive has truly illuminated how understanding your own mind isn't just some, philosophical exercise or a niche interest for navel-gazing. It really is the fundamental starting point for living skillfully. By recognizing that our minds are these vast, fertile gardens that we can actively, consciously tend, we gain immense power to shape our experience of life. We can turn challenges into opportunities, reduce unnecessary suffering, and really enhance our overall well-being.
It really boils down to cultivating that continuous awareness, doesn't it? Becoming aware of the raw data coming in through our senses, recognizing our ingrained filters and biases, learning to skillfully engage with our emotions as important messengers, and consciously choosing our responses rather than being perpetually driven by unchecked thoughts and reactive impulses. This journey, this practice, fundamentally shifts you. It shifts you from being unconsciously driven by the mind's unexamined habits and historical programming to consciously partnering with its incredible potential, its potential for clarity, for creativity, for connection, and for profound resilience. It's really about becoming the architect of your own inner world.
So, as you go about your day after listening to this, maybe consider this question. What weeds, what unhelpful patterns or recurring difficult emotions are currently consuming your energy, perhaps without you even fully realizing it? And conversely, what flowers, what positive mental qualities like patience, kindness, focus, joy, do you genuinely want to nurture and bring to full bloom in your own mind garden? And maybe think, how can you apply just one of these practical tools we discussed today? Perhaps a simple 1-minute awareness check-in at lunchtime, maybe trying a mindful transition between your next two tasks, or using the PREP framework the next time you feel triggered. How can you use one tool to gain just a little more understanding of your own mind today? And perhaps make a slightly more skillful choice in your very next moment.
Because remember, as cognizant life so powerfully reminds us, this transformative journey, this path to becoming more aware and skillful, truly begins and joyfully continues right now, in this very next breath, in the very next choice you make.
That's all for this deep dive. Join us next time for another insightful exploration designed to help you become truly well-informed.